What's
Thomas, thank you
going
so
on?
much, bro. Man, just getting out of the pool. Happy to be here with you. What are you doing?
No, just regular everyday work, doing a little this, a little that, running around. How was the
Excellent.
pool?
Oh, so wet. Just got just,
Huh?
just got physical with it, and it's mainly a breathing exercise more than anything. Just
Yeah,
it,
that's good.
yeah,
Like a
real
little
good.
focus.
Gets you right because you're not distracted by anything. You're with yourself, no electronics. And I try to do like 4 blocks of 1,000, so I'm not stopping too much and like getting distracted.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
You ready to do this?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's
Right.
go.
Let me get my notes straight. My jacket off.
Uh-oh.
You know,
There
we're,
you
we're,
go.
we're, we're about 58 in the studio today. So,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Studio
Uh,
looks good. I almost just came to your house. I thought, you know what? I should just go over
Dude,
there.
well, I was gonna do that with you, but like I got these little mics, okay, for the local podcasting, but
Right.
they got in the ocean, so they got ruined, and I need to
They can't go in the ocean.
can't go in the ocean. I was getting that
No.
sound of the water.
Salt water. That's a doozy to your film
Yeah,
equipment.
yeah, you know about electricity and you know about water, and
Yeah,
we're
it
gonna
doesn't work.
actually go there with that kind of concept. But let's start this off. Welcome to Speaking from Water, episode 36. I'm here with the legendary Thomas Blake. You might
You.
have you might have seen Thomas in movies, plays, TV shows. He produces, he directs, and he also is an artist of light. And we want to get down with all these topics today. So, Thomas, thank you very much for joining us on Speaking from Water.
Happy to be here, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Bro, it's so great to have you. Let's just start at the beach. You were raised at the beach. Surfing in the ocean is part of your DNA from the beginning. Lay it out for us. When was the first time you remember seeing and really loving the ocean?
Man, that was pretty early. I've been my family had a place on Wrightsville Beach for since the I think the 50s. So, I grew up right there on Lagoon Drive. That's where my great grandmother's house was. And it started out God, what was the surf shop that was over man, it was totally 80s surf shop. It was over where like Harris Teeter is now. It was in there. I can't remember the name of it, but they
Are we talking Burt's?
no, 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 no. It was before Burt's. It was on the corner like close to Waterman's in that shopping center. It was on the very corner. I used to go in there and I remember I took some surf lessons pretty early on. And my cousin, he had this old 80s like GNS board that I used to take out there from my grandmother's at Mercer's a lot. And then, probably about the sixth grade, I started hanging out with Matt Gilligan and Chris Curry, and and they really got me into it more. They were already ripping by then. So, yeah, I mean, then once you get in it, it's kind of makes you who you are for the rest. So I've always tried to work that love into the different things that I'm doing in some way or another. Which I guess we'll get into that stuff later, but that's how I ended up
Yeah,
in down some of the past.
I want to kind of reflect on Mercer's because you've spent so much time there. Full disclosure, I have too. However, my time was with a concrete pier, and I'm sure your time was a lot with the old wooden pier at
Oh yeah.
Mercer's, the classic. How was that classic pier as far as North Side Johnny Mercer's as you remember it?
Well, I don't know if it's the old uh it seems like it was always better when you were younger. So I don't know. I remember High Tide used to have really good shore break. And yeah, it was a little bit of a different time, a lot less crowded. You didn't get really hassled by the lifeguards too much for surfing too close to the pier. So that kind of stuff has changed, but the old wooden pier, I mean, I've got nothing but great memories of that place. I met a lot of good friends there. My buddy Brooks lived right on Seagull Street, so we were out there every day, and that's where I met Mitch Akins. He was out there a lot. His parents had a house there, so Jake Miller, a lot of guys from around town that were out there all the time. And we were just groms. I mean, we were young then, but a lot of good times, a lot of good memories, a lot of agro fishermen, and it was fun. It was fun. It seemed like there was waves. Maybe we were smaller, but it seemed like there was waves every day. We could surf all summer, or get out there on the bodyboard, do something out there. But we were out there pretty much every single day. So,
Can you
you
recall
know,
a memorable story from this location with the boys?
man, you know what? The thing I remember the most is getting finished surfing, and a couple stories actually. I remember we would always go take a little shower in Brooks's water hose, and I can always like taste the drinking that water out of the water hose, that Wrightsville Beach water out of the water hose, and that was always like a fond memory that after every session. And then I remember one time it got really big when I was young, and me and Brooks went out there, and it was probably bigger than I should have been out there in. And my mom came out there, and it was like windy and just big, and I couldn't get back in. I was like scared to catch a wave, and I was like, oh no. My mom was all freaking out on the pier, like trying to yell to me. And um, I guess finally I got one and made it in, but I remember that. And I remember some of my first real waves, like real when I finally like were surfing, going down the line, that I remember that first wave that was at Mercer's. Um, and it was glassy. We used to get up early a lot. It was beautiful sunrises out there in that wooden pier. And yeah, I remember that was where I caught the first real wave that I would consider where I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. So a lot of good memories.
So, what year are we talking now, as far as your recollections here?
I mean, I probably started in probably 93, 92, 93 when I was really starting to get out there in sixth grade. Oh no, that was even before then. So maybe, yeah, maybe in the 90s. I mean, early 90s, probably 91, 92. That's when I was taking my cousin's board out there and really my dad was starting to push me in some. I remember one story where my dad was pushing me in, and he was, he's like, of course I was falling all over the place, and he grabbed the board, was like, let me try one, and he jumped on the wave, and I still had the leash on, and he was dragging me behind him. I remember that session with my dad. He wasn't a surfer at all, so he wasn't really doing much either, but I do remember getting drugged behind him.
So your dad didn't surf. So where did this need and want to go surfing come from? How did you want to get into the culture? And then follow up, like what was the Wrightsville Beach surfing culture like there in the early '90s? You referenced Chris Curry and the Gilligans, and we all who know Wrightsville Beach know surfing. They're like, Chris Curry just rips it off the top, and the Gilligans are known for their airs back in the day.
Yeah.
Kind of what was your motivation?
Well, my family, they were always on the sound side, so they were big water skiers. So that was, we were in the water all the time. I think it was just, probably like most people. You get out there and you start doing it, and then it's all you want to do. So, as far as the motivation, but the scene was insane. There was Ben, there was Matt, there was Chris, Mitch Baker, Mark Hunt. It was all these people, and back then Philip Waters still lived here. And he was here, and I mean these kids were. By the time that I really got into it, they were already like winning East Coast championships, and they were, so it was fun to have those guys around you all the time. Um, but there was and there's still a ton of good surfers here, but back in the day, I think for being because the town was a lot smaller too. Now I think it comes with the growth of the town. You get more kids and more people doing it. Um, but for the amount of people that were actually surfing, there was a lot of good surfers here. So it was a really, really fun time to come up and just to get to be around some of those guys and surf with them all the time. It was really inspirational.
Excuse me, I would even follow up and say that might have been a golden period because I spent a lot of time at the beaches today. And back then, when I first arrived in Wrightsville Beach, we're talking, the late 90s, these guys were already young men. And I remember
Yeah.
walking up on the beach and seeing Richard Gilligan 360 air like it was no problem and thinking to myself, oh my gosh, like who are these people? And
Oh yeah.
you have your good surfers here today, but like there was like we just went down the list, the bourgeois, everyone was just blowing minds.
Oh
So
yeah.
your love though for the arts, when did this come about?
I was in the seventh grade. I had to take this like acting drama elective, and then I kind of just got into it then, and then as I got older, I started doing a lot of stuff downtown, a lot of shows at Thalian, and and then I went to UNCW and took drama there. And at the time, they were teaching this technique that was in the actual school was in New York. Old Ed Wagonseller, he was Ed Wagonseller. Yeah, he's also a home seller, but he's the drama teacher down there, and they were teaching this technique, which was Uta Hagen, was one of the founding members of the group theater, which was the kind of the new age of acting. And so anyway, I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to go to her school. She was still living at the time. She was old, but she was still teaching. So I left UNCW and moved to New York and went to her conservatory, which was like no no math, no science, nothing. It was just um acting stuff, all kinds of improv, and then there was like technique classes and voice classes and speech and all that stuff. So that's all you did all day long. So that was kind of the progression of it. And then I was doing some shows in New York, and I got involved in Point Break Live, and then we took it to Los Angeles, and then it kind of took off there, and that started that whole spiral. So that was kind of it was natural, but it was like with anything, you look for the things the way you can like weave in the things that you love, like the surfing and the shows, and then that kind of got woven in together with Point Break. And then like even now, we'll get into that, but now I'm doing like electrical, and that's kind of woven into like my film world, so it all kind of goes together. But yeah, that's how it happened.
Yeah, you just laid out like 20 years there of straight action. I want to
A
I
lot of
want to I
action.
want to I want to go to that very point of Thomas Blake has the aha moment where he says, "I I am really wondering here about this art thing because the electrical thing. Let's back up for a second. Your dad is a third generation, and now
Yeah,
you're the fourth generation
right.
to of the AB electric world. So I'm sure there was a point there in your upbringing where your dad thought, okay, Thomas is probably going to be the fourth. But when you said, I'm not, I'm going to go do this art, like how that's a large thing for a young man to decide. So where was that fire in your belly that you said to yourself, you know what, I'm going to go out of this town I've loved so much for so long. I'm going to New York City, and I'm gonna see what this is all about. Like, what's that fire, and then where? How did it
How
ignite?
did it all go down? I think that with art, much like with surfing, it's kind of one of those things that's like within, right? So, And, you know, I didn't have any family members that were really artists or anything like that. I think it was just one of those things that I think it was just kind of in. I think my grandfather, he was a radio host, and maybe I don't know if it's genetic, I'm not sure, but I just had that drive that that's what I wanted to do, and I really had that drive for since really the seventh grade, since I started. You know, I kind of always knew that was what I was going to do, and of course, you're right. My dad very much wanted me to take over the company, but you know, I had to tell him like it's not happening. And to be honest, I didn't know that it would ever happen.
Well, yeah, totally. And
Um,
how was that conversation for the fathers and the sons listening?
um, you know what? They always think that it's a phase. I remember that, and so they say, "Yeah, go on, do." But whenever you get your wits about you, come on back and we'll be waiting for you. And then that went on for what 20 years or something like that. So I mean, I think that you know my dad was always very proud that I was actually doing it, and the fact that I actually did it and I wasn't like living on the streets. I'm sure that has something to do with it. If it could have, you know, I think I was very fortunate that that was my job, and that's what I did for all those years. So but it was a little hard for him to swallow for sure, which I know it is for a lot of my friends that have gotten into it. They all kind of have the same story, you know, like Mitch, for instance. His dad was very much like, nah, you're not, this isn't gonna work. They never think it's gonna work, and then you have to do it. But I do think that if you're gonna do it, like with any art, you gotta like really do it, which is one of the reasons I left, because I was having, you know, I love this town. I was having a good time here. I was surfing all the time, and that, you know, then I went to Australia and I was over there surfing, and it would have been very easy to come back here and to Wilmington, and but you know, I was in Red Dogs too much. I was surfing too much. There was other things that I wanted to do. So I think it was for me, I had to really get away from everything because I tried it at UNCW here, but it was just too close to everything you knew and your dad and your family and people kind of doubting it. That for me, I knew that I had to get out and really go figure it out on my own, and I knew that to do that I needed to leave. So that was what it took for me. And not that you couldn't, everyone with art I think has a different journey, so it's whatever. And then there's some people that, you know, it's just a hobby. Even that doesn't mean they're less of an artist, but some people are, you know, really want that security of other things. So it depends on what you want. You know, I took a leap, and in some ways you suffer for it. You're broke for a lot of my younger 20s. You're broke, and you know, you're on this roller coaster ride. You're up, you're down, you're booking parts, you're not. So I mean, you go through it. You're an artist, you know. It's feast, it's famine, it's a, and you got to be really mentally strong to deal with it. If not, it's a slippery slope, which is why you see a lot of people, they can go the opposite direction, and it can really be crucial to their mental health because, you know, it's a wild ride. So
The pantheon of artists and art history, what you just described is one key factor to almost every single story that a biography has been written, and we're just talking about the famous successful ones. So it's
right.
like it's part of the game.
No, yeah. And I mean, you see, you know, you think all the time, you see these people, whether it's actors, musicians, whatever, you know, photographers, it doesn't matter. But you see them when they start succeeding, and you're like, oh man, those guys, you know, they just blew up. The majority of the time they didn't just blow up. They've been doing this for a long time, and you just don't know any of the other stuff they've been doing because they're not famous yet. But it's very rare that anyone's ride is smooth. It just doesn't, even when you're like considered successful, it's still up and down. And if for me to ride that wave of, you got to kind of always live in the middle. You can't get too high and you can't get too low, because if you get too high, then the lows are really, really low. And so for me, it was just, I learned early, because there was a couple times in the beginning where you would like book a show, or and you'd say, everyone say, oh my God, you're gonna be famous now, and you would think in your mind, oh my God, maybe they're right. And you might not work for a year. So then that high comes really, really low. And so for me, I learned to just ride in the middle and just try to just take it all, as a more linear path, as opposed to a spiky road.
Epic advice for all artists out there, man. Really, truly. Before we get to LA, I want to hover on New York for a second, because the two dichotomies are so different, and you're leaving little old country Wrightsville Beach to the Big Apple, where if you make it there, you can make it anywhere, as they say. So what was that first experience getting there like? How long were you there before you decided that wasn't a place you wanted to be forever? And what what was that experience being on the East Coast art capital?
Right. Well, I moved there right after 9/11. So what was that? 2001, I think, or
Yep.
2002, sometime in there, whenever 9/11 was. I
That
remember
first
the first,
semester there, that's when you went.
yeah, well, I went to UNCW, I think, for maybe a year, maybe a semester, and then I moved to Burley Heads and went to school over there in Australia on the Gold Coast for a semester. And then I decided, once I came back, I was like, you know what?
Wait, hold up. So you were at Burley Heads on the Gold Coast. Was that an acting thing, or is that mainly surfing?
No, I was in school, but it was a lot of surfing. I was doing their like theater program at Griffith, the Gold Coast, their
What did
university
you think of their style? I should say.
of the acting style.
Yeah,
Is that what you're talking?
in
Yeah,
Australia, yeah, because I'm sure like
it's
it would.
different.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a funny story, and this will tie back around to what I'm doing later. But they were, at that point, I was really into this Uta Hagen thing, which is like realism. It was like trying to like connect with your emotions, and you're doing all that stuff. And in Australia, or at least where I was taking classes, it was very much like this more like showy form of theater. Like there's like a Arto, which is it was more like circusy, some stuff like that. There was a lot of like spitting blood and weird kind of interactive stuff like that, and I hated it. I thought it was so silly at the time. And I kind of had some issues. My drama teacher was like, well, you're not really, and I'm like, well, this is silly, like who's going to spit blood on people and grab the audience members and all that. And then we'll get into what happened down the road. But so it was interesting to see the way that came around, because at the time I was like really into my realism, and then their style was so much different. um but I was also like maybe what, 20 years old. So I was really stubborn, but I was surfing a lot too. So I don't know that I was in school as much, but they were fine with that. They were like, we know what you're doing here. Just show up on occasion and we'll give you your credits and send you back on your way. Um so yeah, so that was my Australia experience, but it ended up kind of coming full circle, even though it was a very different experience at the time. It ended up kind of becoming my life, that style of theater and that style of stuff. So um
Now was
but
like hold up though, because like did that then come around in your brain and you're like, oh, because I learned that one time, now I'm going to use this? Or did the just thing come from osmosis, and it happened to be that you also had learned it in the past? Like, what was that artistic train like?
no, I don't think that I decided I wanted to use it. I just think it kind of came back around. I think as I grew and developed, as a person and as an artist and all that, at that time I was so into this one style that I was like, this is the only way. Um, And I think it just kind of came back full circle, just from my own growth and journey and what was going on with the stuff that I was doing. But I'm sure that it had something to do with it, that I because I always remembered it, you know. I remember having the conversation with the teacher a lot and saying, "This is silly. I don't know why we're doing this." And him saying, "Well, you can't just be this type of artist. You need to like open your mind." And, you know, at the time I was like, "Man, whatever, not happening."
And just for context for those listening, Thomas founded, you invented a play called Point Break Live, and this is 15 years later, essentially. Am I right? 10 years later?
Well, Point Break Live was probably about uh let's see, Point Break was started in 2006, so this was probably
Six
2000, so 5 or 6
years
years
later.
later.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow, man, you did Point Break for a long time. So
yeah.
if well, let's just go straight there since we're on the subject. Tell the audience what Point Break Live was and how it came about into your mind that you wanted to create this show.
Well, okay, so Point Break, I first of all, full disclosure, I didn't create Point Break. I was the director of it. It was written as like a backyard thing. There was another woman named Jamie Keeling who wrote it. And it was just kind of like a one-off thing. And then I kind of got wrapped up in it through another friend. And what happened with Point Break is, you know, Point Break was one of my favorite movies. So I had seen this thing in New York, they were doing it, and so I went down and got involved with it. And
So it started in New
it
York.
was it started in New York, yeah, and it was more like a theater show, right? So I was in it to start with, and then we got asked actually by Quicksilver to come to LA with it. And they had they were going to do some kind of like event. Well, we got to LA and the event fell through. Well, and at that point I took it over as far as directing it goes and producing it. The New York side of it was dead, and so we went to look for a venue in LA, a theater, because that's kind of how we were doing it, and we couldn't find one. So we ended up putting it in a bar. And then we threw it in the bar, and I didn't have a stage. That was my first live show directing anything, and there was no stage. So I, kind of used what we had around us. I was like, you know what? We don't need the stage. We'll just go out there and do it in the audience, or you go over here. So that was kind of my spin on it. That I think sent it into a different realm, because essentially it was the show, the movie. And then we picked Keanu Reeves out of the audience, which was always the kicker. So the audience chose the Keanu Reeves character, Johnny Utah, and then the rest of it was just to describe what it was. It was kind of like a sketch version of Point Break, and the whole idea was to take a huge budget movie and put it on stage for like $100. And that was kind of always the idea for all the shows that I did. And then I went on to do Terminator, which that one I fully wrote from the get-go. Then I went on to do Tom Gun Live, which is a Top Gun spoof. So that was kind of how we ended up in Los Angeles. When I left New York, I thought I was going out there for like to LA for maybe a month or something. We were going to go out there, we were going to open the show, and then we got to LA and everything fell apart. We didn't have a theater, we didn't have anything. So I walked around downtown Los Angeles and just walked into places and said, and at that point downtown LA was like super super sketchy. No one was going down there, but I kind of figured maybe they'll let me do it somewhere in here. And we found this, it was really a dance floor. And so we had a dance floor in the middle of this room that they had chicken wire all over the ceiling, because the ceiling was literally falling out. And And so they were trying to revive downtown. So they were like, you know what, we'll just kind of turn a blind eye to this violations of code that they've got going on in here because we want to get people down here. So we opened it in that little dance floor, and we didn't have anywhere for the audience to sit. So I just put them around the dance floor like a boxing ring. And that's, I think, what really turned the thing on its head, because it was like this, like, you were like in the middle of these people, like a boxing fight, and they were like, yeah, go, and it really made it. And it was a total accident, but it made the show into what it became, which was like this really interactive thing, because we didn't have a stage, we didn't have anywhere else to do the stuff. We only had a little bit of room, so we just said, I can't fit 7 people on this little dance floor and jumping around. Go out in the audience and do it. So that's kind of how it all came about. And it was kind of an accident. We didn't think it was gonna last very long. And then we started having the celebrities showed up. The Catherine Bigelow, who directed it, she showed up like the second week, and then Busey showed up, and then all these people started showing up, and then it just took off. And then I think we did it for 15 years almost. And we were doing it. So Point Break, we were doing, we would do 2 shows in LA a week, and then we would do once a month in SF, 2 shows in a big, like 400-seat venue every first Friday. Then we do 2 shows in San Diego at the Belly Up. And then in the middle of that, we would go to like Petaluma, or we did Vegas for a little while. We came over here. We kind of started going all around. And then as that was happening, I wrote the second show. And so then we were doing Terminator, we were doing Point Break, Terminator 2 Judgment Play, Point Break. So we would do Friday, Terminator, Saturday, Point Break, and then go to SF and do 2 shows of Point Break on Friday, the 2 shows on, or we do 1 show. It was all over the place. We were doing lots of shows, and we would pack everything for both shows. So we would literally we might do Point Break at 8 and then do Terminator at 10, rip it all down, change all the costumes. And so it was wild. It was a fun time for sure.
So incredible, the backstory. And I had the personal honor of viewing it in 2008. I'm also friends with Mitch, everyone listening, and Mitch Akins, and we went out to see him, and it was wild. The interaction was something I'd never seen before. And was this a unique aspect to it, or had anyone had any play like this? Because you're coming from a rigid place, it sounds like, in New York City, where there's a stage and everyone's used to having it go only one way, and here it's going both ways. Was that novel?
Yeah. At the time it was. It's not anymore. I mean, not to, what we did with Point Break, what was so cool about it is, like, we didn't have anything. We were rehearsing in the garage of, this someone that we knew. We didn't have any money. No one thought it was going to work. We were in like the venue that we opened in, we were blowing up. We were selling out Friday, Saturday night, 150 every weekend. And literally, they called me one day and they said, the fire marshal came in, he shut the place down. A brick had fallen out of the ceiling while they were open and landed on the bar. So they shut it down. So that, we had a lot of stuff going against us, and we didn't know what we were doing either. I just really, when I went out to LA, I knew Mitch. I asked him at the time, he was like a film actor. And, I'm like, look, I'm going to do the show, and kind of explain it to him. He's like, nah, it sounds kind of silly. I'm like, well, just give it a shot, try it. He didn't really want to do theater, but we didn't, and we kind of we ended up with a kid, Tobias, who played Bodie, who, come to find out after we cast him, was kind of a child star. He was in Hocus Pocus. He was like the evil guy in Hocus Pocus. we didn't know it at the time, but he hadn't really been doing much in a while, and we just really lucked. It was one of those situations where you just luck out, you get the right people together somehow, miraculously, they all come together. And I'm not naive enough to think that if it would have been one different person, it would have never worked. Like, we just happened to, sometimes you just like land on magic, and then and then through that, you obviously you got doors that open up, um because of the success of that. Then you can start branching out. But we just lucked out, really. I just got really lucky to find the right people at the right time and the right audience. I mean, that, like you said, that wasn't happening. And then after it started happening, all these shows started coming out like that, especially in LA, because everyone was looking at it going, well, these guys are like, they're kind of like the misfits. We were always like the misfits. We weren't really, I was like a surfer kid. And Mitch was like a surfer kid. We weren't really like theater kids. We were more like just these kind of like punk rock theater guys. Just, let's get in the garage and write something and see if we can like make it work. And come to find out, there was a lot of people. I always called it theater for people who didn't like theater. So people wanted something fun to do, but besides just go to the bar and drink. Of course, now also keep in mind we were in our 20s then. So that was like the age group, and the movie was at that age where it was like nostalgic to people in their 20s. So there was a lot of people that wanted to drink, a lot of people that wanted to party, but this was like a new spin on it. You could do that, you could have a good time, but you got to see this crazy show too. And it was never pretentious. I think that was really helpful for what we were doing. It was like, we're all in on this for a couple hours. Let's just have a good time, not worry about anything else. And we're going to literally act like children. And that was like always one of my main like notes. I'm like, play like a kid. That's what we're doing up here. This isn't rocket science. All we're trying to do is make people have a good time. And that's how we're going to go at this. And if they like it, good. If they don't, we'll do something else. But and then it just it turns out that there was a lot of people that wanted to do that. So that's how it worked. So that's
That,
it.
that's really the heart of the art of entertainment right there.
Yeah.
Now you guys weren't huge on the theater, but you both had the theater background. You both put your time in high school and then in early
Yeah.
college. You both were classically educated. So to the kids out there who have these ambitions of getting on TV and movie sets, but they want to maybe skip that part, what do you recommend? Because speak to the importance of the canon, understanding the past and where you fall in the lineage of the art that you're dealing with.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's which is I'll start by saying this. First of all, that was one of the things that I really loved about New York. So New York was like the place, and really more so as far as the acting world goes back in the day, like that was where you went to like cut your teeth. Like if you wanted to go and train, and you would go to New York first, and you would like kind of do the art work there. And then when you got ready, you would go to LA. Um, and that was when I went to New York, that was very much how it was. Um, People, it was more about doing the art and doing the creating. And it was like, no one ever said, well, how much are we going to get paid? Like, you knew you weren't getting paid anything for the most part. Not that there is no money, but it wasn't about that. People were more about it into the art side of it. Whereas once I got to LA, it was very much more like, okay, we're going to do this, but we have to get paid for it. And there's a fine line in the middle. If you want to do it as a career, you can't just always do it for the art, because you got to live. But you can't always do it for the money, because you're not doing your art. Um, so what I would say to anyone that's trying to get into it is, I would always suggest some kind of training. It's very and not everyone, I guess, needs it, but if it's something that it's like anything. They say, give yourself 10 years. Whatever it is you want to do. It doesn't matter if it's business or art or whatever. Give yourself 10 years. Then that after 10 years, you should start seeing some kind of career path. But that's your kind of timeline for it. Of doing the work before then, because no one really comes into anything just great. It's very rare. I mean, some people, but even you look at athletes, whatever. Usually they're in it about 10 years before they start becoming professional. And that's what my teachers always told me in acting school. This is going to be a long haul, but stick with it, stick to your training. And also with any art, I think you got to be aware of how it's like reflecting in your real life, and I think that's one of the big parts of all the training is like you start to see it everywhere as opposed to just like doing it. You know what I mean? Your goggles become different once it's in your mind, and that's what you're doing. So I think it's stay open minded and pay attention to what the world is giving you, as far as how you're going to weave that into your art. That's what I'd say. Famous
Love it.
quote.
Yeah, hardcore information there. That's so solid. Uh, Now, during those 15 years, you're super successful with the play, and but you're also working on movies. You're on TV shows, which is a different medium, but you're still acting. So, can you contrast those two places, the live stage where you're in front of the audience versus cameras and takes, and
Right.
TVs versus movies?
Yeah, it's a totally different thing. I mean, it's almost like two different worlds. At the heart of it, I guess it's the same. You're trying to be in the moment and connect with people. Whether it be on the stage, you're connecting with the audience, or if on the camera, you're more trying to connect with the person you're in the scene with. But they're totally different things. And then you've got another third thing that you don't hear much about, but that's the audition. So you got an audition, which is a totally different thing than once you get the part. The audition is literally a lot of them. It's either you're sitting in front of a bunch of people, you just got these 8 pages of script here, and then you're going in front of all these people that you've never met, and you're trying to like look at it and not look at it, and if hopefully you remembered it but you probably didn't, or you're taping yourself just like this, and you're someone standing behind the camera. It might be your mom, it might be who knows who it is. And that's a whole nother piece. So you've got kind of these different aspects where once you get for me, once I got the part, it was always so much easier than the audition, because then you're like, once you have it, you're like, this is, it's mine, and all the sets here and the people are here and you're all dressed up and whatever it is that you're going to be. Um, and you like own it. So it was always easier for me once I got it to deal with it. The hardest part is the hustle to get it, because you're auditioning for maybe 100 and you're getting one if you're lucky. And that's just the way it is. But the theater and the film, it's obviously with the theater, what's great about the theater is like and I think you can build in theater so much more quickly because you're getting an instant reaction. So like if you're lucky enough to have a long run on a theater show, you can very quickly start weaving it and figuring out what people are reacting to because it's happening in the moment. Okay, this will make them laugh, this will make them clap, this will make them get quiet, whatever, and you can see it in real time. Whereas on the film, you're doing it, and by the time you actually see the film, you're so far disconnected from what you were doing. It's hard to it's kind of hard to use it to like better yourself, because you're not in, you know what I'm saying, you're not there anymore. You might have done 3 other films since then, and you're not like talking to the cast members really anymore or anything. So it's a little bit, that's why I do love theater, because it's real time. It's like happening. You can figure out what's working, what's not. And then film is, film is film. It's a lot of takes. It's a lot of starting and stopping, and that's always the upside is, if you mess up, let's do it again. So they're just a different thing.
Out of those three, what gives you the most artistic stoke when a job is well completed, or just out of your own canon of experiences? What do you look back on and you're like, ooh, that was a good?
I think it'd have to be the theater, because the theater, right then, if it sucked or if it was good right then. If you get to the end of the show and everyone jumps up and they're clapping, then you did all right. If you make a joke on stage and nobody does anything, you might want to cut that joke. It's not working. Whereas, like I said, the film, it's not like that, because you're not seeing a reaction until you get into the movie theater, and then you're so disconnected from it, from the actual moment, that it's kind of hard to remember. So I would say the theater definitely is where you get that real, I mean, and don't get me wrong, obviously in the film stuff, you get a lot more of like, hey, weren't you that guy in that thing? Whereas no one's going to see as much, not as many people are seeing theater. So, that part's, interesting. But as far as actual artistic value, that's honestly one of the things that, like, I didn't like about it so much is like when I used to come home and people like from high school or something would be like, hey, I saw you in this, and you're kind of embarrassed because you're like, nah, I'm just a guy from high school. I'm not I'm not any cooler than I was before, so I would always, like, in the grocery store, be like, oh shoot, there's that person, they're gonna ask questions. And so that's I think that the theater would be the one.
In such a classical medium that just goes back, past Shakespeare to go to the
Oh yeah.
Greeks, and everyone's doing live performances. In this time of digital media, is there a place for showing theater on a screen, or how do you think about that? What's the conflict?
It's tricky, right? Because people used to always say, or like, we used to do a lot of private events, and people would say, well, just send me the video of the show so we can see if we want to book you or not. But to me, I always felt like it was actually a disservice, especially with my shows, because the whole point was they were interactive. So, you go from this 3D thing that's happening in real time to this 2D flat version of an interactive show. So all you see is other people being interacted with in a flat version. And I always thought it was a disservice. So I was like, you know what? Here's a little promo I'll send you. I'm not sending you the whole show because you're never going to get it. And to be honest with you, if you watch it just as a whole on a flat, like one shot, doesn't look that good, because you're missing the point. So I think it's tricky with live theater, but that's the point of live theater, is that you're there, and no matter how you do it. Some people want to dress up and go to the theater, or whatever it is that you're into. It's like a event. It's not like a sit back and watch it. Oh, Mitch is texting me as we speak.
Incredible,
This
incredible, dude. How
is this thing
serendipitous
going
is that?
live?
No,
Yeah.
it's not live. No, no, no,
Okay.
no. Well, I'll tell you though, bro. I texted Mitch, and again, guys, like, Mitch is my close friend and Thomas's, and I know you, Thomas, through Mitch. So I texted Mitch and I said, hey, I'm interviewing Thomas. Give me a what's up, and I forwarded him our notes beforehand. And he's like, dude, great questions. Ask him though how he got to LA. But so you covered that already. Um, yeah, super cool. Yeah, Mitch is an awesome artist unto himself.
Oh yeah.
Back to the you kind of struck me there on the interview thing, because I think it's something that's so relatable to people, whether it's a job interview or the casting for a part. You've played both roles. You've picked people and you've been picked. And I'm sure you have you're a number of denials. So like
Way more denials. Yeah.
well, such is the life of the artist, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and so like my question, I guess, is first from the person in power, the decider. Do you almost always know the person before they might even open their mouth, like even how they're entering a room?
A lot of
That
times. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes, what I've learned from casting, especially in my shows, and I've directed some films and stuff too, and a lot of times it's like the opposite of what you think you want. A lot, because look, when you're directing things, even after you've cast it, you have this huge plate of crap that you got to take care of. You got all this stuff that you're trying to put together. And then these people that are auditioning, they're just working on this one part for you. You know what I mean? So they're actually putting a lot more effort and time into it than you have capacity to handle. You can't think so detailed about each and every part. So you kind of, the way that I do it, you kind of have this idea of what you're looking for. And then you just be very open-minded to, and very humbled to know that a lot of times someone else's idea is way better than yours, and you gotta just go with it. You know what I mean? But there's definitely some, like I had this one guy that was auditioning for Pappas, and crazy story. My friend Tom, we were holding the audition, and I had seen, at this point we'd been doing the show for a while, so I had seen a bunch of people already. And last minute, one of my friends called and said, "This guy Tom, he's coming down. He played Busey for Halloween or something. I don't know." He said, "You got to see this guy." So like last minute, the guy shows up. He didn't really know what was going on. It was actually, I actually already had the audition. I was doing the callbacks, and he's like, "I can make it after work." And he like came in, and he just walked in. He had a button-up shirt on, and he just ripped it open like that before he even like started talking. He just like came in and was like, "I'm Tom," and then he just went and ripped it open. Was like, "Hey, I'm Gary Busey," or whatever. And I was like, "Oh yeah, this guy's it." Like I don't even need. I'd already actually like took some other kid out to dinner because I was like, "We're gonna cast that kid. He's great, but I will have one more callback just in case." And then this other kid came in, did that. I was like, "Oh, he's it." I had to tell the other kid that I had taken out to dinner, like, "Sorry, we're going a different way." But so sometimes, and sometimes, you're completely, it's completely different than what you thought.
So
So
reverse it for us then on the flip side of you being the actor sitting down, like do you go for roles that are kind of more in your DNA, or are you like a Tom Hanks character? They talk about how some actors they can morph into anything. What's your
right.
philosophy on that, and do you kind of know what kind of actor you are when you get into this game?
Yeah, it's no, I don't think you know what you are necessarily. Obviously most young people when they get into it, which is, honorable, and they should, are like, "I can do anything. Just give me any part, I'll do it." And they probably can. Now, having said that, I definitely think that a lot of it you kind of start getting pigeonholed into yourself, from the parts you're doing. Or like for me, I always play like bad guy, the drug addict, the cowboy. It's always the same thing, which is totally different than my all the stuff I'm in. I'm like
Don't
super
forget
mean
Union
to everyone.
Soldier. You play admirable characters
I,
also.
I
Yeah.
did, yeah, yeah, right. But you end up a lot of times in this, you start, it's really what you get a role. So everyone, the way the whole thing works, just for anybody that wants to know, but you end up, when you go and you try to meet with these agents and stuff to get signed up so that they can send you out on auditions, the first thing they do is they ask you for a reel, which is like clips of different things you've been in. And then your reel, as you book things and you get more jobs, your reel is kind of your like business card, right? So the more you book in a certain vein, the more your agents are going to send you out for those certain things, and the more they're going to send out that reel that has those certain types of characters. Um, so for me, that kind of like got me down this road of these types of characters. But I'd like to say I personally like to play things that are a little further away from me. It's just more easier, and that might be more from me coming from the theater world because it's a little like bigger. Um, where some people, I was never really interested in play. Not that I wouldn't, because the money would be great, but like a lot of like the lead characters in a TV show, right? They're kind of like they do the same thing every episode. They're kind of acting, and then it's those really fun characters that like pop in the episodes that are like causing the mischief or like breaking the law or whatever. Those are always the fun ones. Those are always so which I guess would be kind of like a character actor, like what you're talking about. But I would rather do that than try to go in there and play me. For some reason, it's easier for me to do that.
So what makes a great story?
Um, you know what? I think that a great story is connection. Um, and I was actually listening to Rick Rubin. He was talking about something, how he was saying when you create things and you create stories, always create them for yourself. Don't worry about everyone else. Create them for yourself and what you're connecting with. Because ultimately, much like what we did with Point Break, we were doing this thing that was really just for ourselves, but come to find out all these other people have that same want that same thing that you want. So if you try to create things for people, I feel like it's not as authentic, and what people really want is authentic in any art, no matter what it is you're doing, for it to be authentically the artist. And if you, as soon as you try to fake it, and I've done it before, I tried to, as soon as I tried to do anything for money, it never worked. And so I learned, like, what, go back to basics. Don't do it for money. Do it because you want to do it, or you want to do it. I want to get my friends together and I want to make this show and just have a good time. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter, but just do it, um, and be authentic with it. So I think that's what makes a good story as well.
Well said. Now, this dude, the story of your trajectory here is incredible. So let's link it back up. The COVID-19 hits, the theaters are shut down.
Yeah.
What is your thought process? Where are you mentally?
Oh man. So I had just uh at that point we had been doing Tom Gun Live for about 3 years at that point. Point Break had shut down for a while. Um, and then we decided we were going to bring it back. And we opened in LA. I did all the press, we did all the advertising. I spent all the money that you have to spend to open a show. And it opened March 7th, 2020. We did one show March 7th. March like 12th, they shut the city down. So, I had all these huge stacks of like LA weeklies with my ads in them and all these magazines. And I had spent all this money on the publicist, and all this splash was out there that we were back. We were coming back with Point Break. And I remember I like left LA because it was like empty and dark. And my girlfriend at the time was in Oregon. So I was like, you know what? I'm going up there where the woods. I was worried that they were going to shut the whole city down. It was going to be like, you can't go anywhere. You can't get out of here. There was some talks of that. But I remember like leaving and just seeing all those papers like sitting out in front of the coffee shops with all my money, all of this money I had saved in ads just flushed down the toilet. And they don't give you your money back because of COVID. And I had them for like 3 weeks. I was like 4 weeks because usually when I would open the show, I would do like a big splash in the beginning. Ads everywhere, publicists, we had the PR, the reviews, all that stuff. And so all that money was just gone. Um, and I always finance my own shows. I always like made enough money to finance it myself. Not that it was a huge financial burden, but because that was kind of the point, but it cost money. Um, so that happened. I went, and then, I had already been thinking a little bit about coming back. My dad had been asking me to come back for a while. He was getting ready to retire, and he's like, I I'm not sure what's going to happen to the company if you don't come back. And I just kept saying, well, things are going pretty good out here. But there was some things that I was missing. I wanted to settle down a little bit. It's always greener on the other side, right? So you want to, have more security, and then as soon as you get it, you're like, God, I just want to be like in the wind again. So, but at that point, I was kind of like, you know what? I wanted to own a house. I was never going to be able to own a house in LA. I felt like it was just, too much, too expensive. And so there was some things in my life that I wanted to do that I didn't feel like I was going to be able to do. So I decided now's the time. Let's go do it. So that was July. I got back here July 4th to Wilmington. And 2020, and kind of, you know, did the same thing I did when I started the other thing. I just kind of didn't know what I was doing and just worked really hard and kind of figured out how I was going to make it work, and tried to tie in, the surfing and the theater and the film, and figure out how I could somehow mesh that into an electrical company. Um, and come to find out, you know what? It's all very similar. So you're at the end of the day, we are providing a service, that whether you're an artist or you're an electrician or you're whatever you're doing, you're providing a service, and you want to make people happy, you want to be fair, you want to treat people like you want to be treated. And then other than that, business, it's all the same. You're wrangling people, you're coming up with ideas, trying to create new ways to do, and then you're trying to like use what you who's that? It's okay. We got an answering service. Don't show those people, whoever that is. But trying to use the things that you have to your advantage. And I was very lucky with coming back into this company because it is my great grandfather who started it. So not that it's been easy, but I had a good platform, diving board, as we would say as a swimmer, to get going. And then it was just figuring out, you know, how to make it your own and how to upgrade it. It's such an old company that I wanted to, so I did some new things with lighting. We've been working on more lighting design stuff. Obviously more internet stuff. That was something that had been lacking. But it's actually turned out to be fairly similar running the business, just a different and you get to bring your dog to work, so that's good. Um but yeah, so it's been an interesting ride, but it's been good.
And your what strikes me so much about your transition into your new world is the connection of you being an artist at your core. excuse me, tell me a little bit about how you stepped into this role and you looked at how things were and how your mind then got creative and was like, hey, hold up. Uh, I know this about lighting just from my own experiences in on
Right.
the set, on the stage. What are some of these lighting uh, factors that you can bring to a room, and is every room different? How do you engage a room, I guess I should say?
Right. I mean, I think um especially from the theater perspective, because we did being the director, I did, was always in the light booth, setting lights, changing lights, but then in the film world as well. There So when I came back after, I was doing this as a kid, and I think I left here um like in 2000. I'd been doing some electrical work with my dad throughout my life, but and I left in 2000, and they were basically doing like four recessed cans and a fan in every bedroom. And then I came back in 2020 and they were doing the exact same thing. I'm like, you guys are really doing the same thing you did when I left 20 years ago? We haven't done anything different, and so I started wanting to bring in more of, and this, from photography, like more lighting as a mood, I guess you could say, instead of having like this really top heavy, like right now, this is terrible lighting. But this really like hard direct light, like doing more like bounce light is what it would more or less be. But instead of shooting things, the instead of like lighting the thing, like light the wall to light the thing. So it's a little more even, which is, we do in film all the time. There's very rarely any time in a film set that they're shining a light right on you. It's usually bounced off something or going through some kind of diffuser or something like that. But so just bringing some of those techniques into what we were doing, which has been a little bit tricky because everyone's so used to this same old way of doing it that when I go into a house and I'm walking through with a homeowner and I'm like, I mean, you can do that, but I would do it like this. And they're like, yeah, but what happens if, that's not enough light or whatever, and you just have to go, well, I don't know, let's give it a shot. So there's a lot of that going on too, It's just like any art though. You got to kind of say, well, I mean, we'll figure it out, but and usually the end product is just so much so unique and different, and they end up loving this stuff. But even when you're trying to like pitch them on it, in my mind I'm going, I don't know. I'm not sure if it'll work, but it seemed to have worked out so far.
Well,
So
telling that story, my mind goes right back to when you're pitching the play and you're only giving a snippet. It's like you're telling the person, you got to actually see it to understand it, and
that's right.
that's why this is art here. And so
Yeah.
much of the light you describe to a customer is that
Yeah,
it's
and
a
it's also new. I mean, I'm not that it's new, not like I'm coming up with some like groundbreaking version of lighting up your house, but to these people it's new. And to me it's new. But again, it's kind of one of those like, what do you how do you keep yourself relevant, and how do you get to, I am very lucky to have had those experiences with the theater and the film and all that. And how do you go about using that and not just letting that go to waste and with what you're doing every day, and that's where I was talking about tying it in. Like, how do you bring in the surfing into your theater world? Point Break Live, how do you bring in the film into your electrical world? Well, it's lighting design. So they're all connected. You just have to find the ways that you can bring your art into whatever you're doing, or bring whatever you're doing into your art, either way you want to look at it, you know what I mean? So and they're all tied in, and that's again like kind of what I was talking about with being aware of of your life, and how your life is influencing your art, and how your art is influenced, and trying to look at it on a broader scale, or a broader picture. So because you start realizing it, if you're paying attention, that they're all connected, and they can all be very useful to each other, if you let your mind know that it's there. You know what I mean? So that's what I've been doing.
Well, you just did a big academic process to sit in the seat you're sitting in. You studied the world of electricity down
Oh
to the
yeah.
core that the state gave you the license. So
Yeah.
you're currently very familiar with the actual particles that make the light happen.
Yeah.
And light is as we all know, is a physical thing that involves waves, and it's in the environment just like everything else around us, whether it be the sound waves, the waves that the wind makes over the water that makes a wave in an ocean. um, I guess, what is your philosophy of light in its physical form, and does it have a consciousness of itself? Um, let's start there, I suppose.
Oh, whoa, bro. Um, you know what? I mean, so here's the other question. Is is it is it dark, or is it just no light? I don't know. There's like there's like with heat, there's no such thing as cold. It's just less heat, you know? So I guess what came first, the light or the dark?
Well, I'm going to counter that with, when you're dreaming, where does the light come from?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it all comes from the sun until it's in your dream, right? Well, and then I guess we're making like, I mean, you know, electricity, the whole thing is, I can study that book till the end of time, but to really wrap your brain around it, it's like wind. It's like, what is it? It's like these crazy you have these crazy theories of it, and I mean, it is something, obviously. It's electrons flying down this wire, and then they like have to like let off their energy so that they go through this light bulb, and make a little arc. And but I mean, it's obviously a very important piece of our life is light. What is it? I don't know. What is a black hole? I'm not sure what that is either. So it's a very good question. And I don't know if I don't know that the NEC electrical code book is gonna explain that to me. I'll have to look.
Okay. Well, let's keep going here. When I'm on the water and you're on the water, and the light changes, whether it be at the sunrise, the sunset, the middle of the day, the light and what it does onto that water has a different effect in the soul. And when you look at
Yeah.
it, I guess my first question to you is, when you are on the water and the light's hitting it, what kind of light do you like to interact with that water to make you feel the best?
Well, I mean, the magic hour, as we like to call it in the film world, which is, the sunrise, sunset, is always the prime time for me. And I think, again, it's because it's not, which is what I'm trying to do similar in some of the stuff I'm doing. It's not that direct light. When you get that direct overhead light, you get all these shadows, you look sick, you don't glow, right? So I think that glow, and I think that the feeling of the glow on you is it is my favorite time, because you're getting it from the front as opposed to straight overhead. And usually it's glassier in those times too, which is always nice. usually that's when it's going to be glassy. So that's when I seem to enjoy it the most.
Well, we've been going strong here for a little over an hour, and I'm gonna wrap it up here in a second. You're very busy. You're the CEO, so thank you very much
My phone's ringing off the hook, off the
it,
chart here.
yeah, dog. So like I want to kind of go to the place of like the core of the artist, back to that place. How does the artist continue to make new art that's groundbreaking and uh, with the world of having to sell it and then having it be critiqued, but still maintain the authenticity of the artist doing a new thing that's so groundbreaking? Where where does that live in the individual of the artist?
I think it goes back to authenticity. Um, I think you, as the artist, you need to make what you love and where your soul is pulling you. And if you do that and you're real with that, I truly do think that everything else will, all those other things will fall into place. Because people can see that. People can feel that. And really, at the end of the day, that's what sells. Like anyone can sing there's a lot of people that can hit notes and sing a song, right? A lot of people can do that. But why are some of them huge success? And usually that's because they are connecting with those notes in a real way that other people want to be a part of. They want to feel that as opposed to hear it. So I think just stick to your art and stick to your um to who you are as a person, and let all the other stuff happen naturally, organically.
So would you say maybe pay attention to the light in the dream?
Yeah, definitely pay attention to the light in the dream, even if you don't know where it came from. And that's the key. Even if you don't know where the light came from, because we don't know, pay attention to it. Because there's a reason why it's in your dream. And I guess it's the reason why in your dream there is light, so you can see your dreams. So make sure you see your dreams and live yourself through them, and be true to yourself, and everything else will be all right.
So fire. Now, does do all conscious human beings have the ability to become artists? And to the
Yes,
okay.
yes, they do. I don't know, and it doesn't even. It might not be art that me and you think, but they can. Art is a lot of things, right? And it can be a lot of things. You can be a gardener, you can be a cook, you can be you can be a organizer, someone that just likes to organize, whatever. Yeah, everyone has it in them, and everyone's doing it all the time. They just don't know because it might not be considered like what we know as art. But yes, I do believe anyone can be an artist in their own way. But again, you know what? Pay attention to what's going on around you, and you can find that.
And follow up, what makes it art?
What makes it art? Um, your soul, your inner being, and that's what makes art unique to you, because it's you. And real art is just a leg of who you are as a person and who you are as a soul. So I think that's why anything can be art, if you connect your soul to it.
And the Duchamp made the urinal, and
That
the
was art.
rest the rest oh, it stands at the pillar of modern art. Well, like
Well,
that's
it
why
could
we
be. I'll tell you a funny story. I was in Germany working on the Hunger Games, and we went one of my friends that I went to school with in New York, he was German. He lived in Berlin. And so we went there and we went to the Berlin Modern Art Museum or whatever. And so I have all these pictures, it would be like 1,000 chairs like sitting up, or just really, modern art things. Well, then he started going up to like the fire hydrants and things like that that were actually, and I have all these pictures of him like looking at the fire hydrant, and it honestly, it looks like that might have been one of the pieces, but it was just so that kind of goes back to that, anything is the guy that builds the fire hydrant, artist, can't deny it.
But here, let me bookend this. The fire hydrant guy builder needs to call it art. He needs to sign it. That's what Duchamp did. He signed it. Then he entered it into the art festival there in France, and they laughed at him. But that was the start. He had to do those two things. He had to call it art as the conscious being, and
Right.
he had to tell the world with his signature that this is here art. Yes.
That's true. But or I don't know. I mean, do you have to call it art? There's so many different versions of the fire hydrant that could have been built, right? I mean, it's long, it's got the hose on the end, it's got the thing. I mean, it could have been, more round, maybe. I
Bro,
don't know.
I think you as an artist have to, one, call yourself an artist, two, make the art,
Sign
and then say that thing over there, that's art. I think those things have to happen for
have to happen.
they have, because if they don't happen, then it's like a utility. It's a thing that's there. All wheels can't be art unless there's some kind of thing that make it art
Unless you're
in
at
the.
Burning Man and then you decorate them,
Well,
and
there
then
you
they're
go. Yeah,
and then they're art.
bingo.
Good point. A good point.
Yeah.
Well, I'll make sure
Well,
that whenever I go into a house and I design these lights, I'll ask them if they'll let me sign their wall in permanent
bro,
marker.
or at least just say, hey, this is a Thomas Blake edition here,
Yeah,
and Tom,
this is
and
good.
this is it. Like, you're known for this
And
thing,
then you
like
have to follow it up by, and that's gonna cost you. Yeah,
big
right.
time, big time.
Yeah. That,
Uh, are you familiar with the light artist James Turrell?
I don't think so.
Well, I'll tell
No.
you, bro. Like in preparation
Check
for
it
this,
out.
yeah, dude, like he's one of America's. He has a Medal of Freedom from Obama. He's like 80 now, but yeah, dude, you got to check him out. He's right up your alley, bro. Like in preparation for this interview, I listened to a lot of his interviews. Charlie Rose like 10 years ago, like
Yeah.
deep stuff that is right up your alley. So shouts out James Turrell, and we're gonna wrap this thing up right now, and I'm gonna ask you a final question.
Okay.
What's the meaning of life?
The meaning of life is uh man, that's a good one. I think the meaning of life is stoke. Stay stoked, stay happy, try to make others around you happy, and try to do things that you love and that bring you joy. And I think that's it. And bring others joy, spread the love. Spread the love between you and everyone else. And that's it.
Well, Thomas, thank you very much for spending the time. This has been a very deep and insightful conversation. Speaking with someone that is on such a high creative level has been great for me, and I'm sure it's going to be great for anyone out there listening. If you found this conversation insightful and groundbreaking to your own soul, smash that like button, smash that subscribe button,
Smash it.
just smash it up. This has been Speaking from Water episode EP36. I am your host, Sean Ruttkay. And with that, I bid you farewell. Thank you very much. Thomas, thank you so much.
Thank you guys. We did it.
Bro.
Woo.